Excellent. Okay, so you're all very welcome. So this is the Considering Further Study workshop. My own name is Elaine Kiley, and I'm one of the team of careers advisors here in UL. And very nice to meet with you all today. And as I said, happy to take any questions either through the chat function or at the end of the session. If you want to turn on your microphones, feel free to do so. Just to, I suppose, set the scene in context. I mean, when we're thinking in terms of further study, it's probably a good idea to kind of think about it in the context of, you know, part of your career planning cycle overall. And, you know, career planning is a cyclical process. You will be involved in doing it a number of times over the course of your career. And I suppose there's 4 major components to it. I'd suggest when we're thinking about it, starting at the yellow part of the circle that's on the slide there, the knowing yourself is very useful. Knowing what it is you're good at, knowing what you're interested in, knowing what's important to you, what motivates you, what energizes you. So having a sense of all of that is really useful in terms of background information then when you're exploring opportunities. In this instance, when you're thinking in terms of opportunities, it might be around postgraduate study. You know, on another occasion, it might be in terms of career roles and career jobs or graduate opportunities that you're looking for. And obviously then, you know, armed with all of that information, you make choices. And sometimes you'll make a number of choices, or you'll try out a number of those choices on a given time, and then move into taking action. And that's, you know, the concrete stuff like putting your application together, your personal statement in the case of postgraduate study, or it might be CVs, applications, and indeed it could be interviews also in relation to postgraduate study. So how can we help you? So the career service, we're open all year round, and we can help you, you know, with all of that. We can help you through workshops and seminars that we run, for example, like this one on researching postgraduate study options, but we can help you individually preparing supporting statements, thinking in terms of that knowing yourself aspect around values, motivations, skills, reflecting on your personality preference, thinking about your strengths. So all of that like kind of forms part of that know yourself. But then also in terms of your exploration of your psychometric tests, your abilities. We do presentations on and workshops on the job search. We facilitate employers to come in and deliver webinars, and we have live workshops. We offer professional development workshops, for example, for research postgrads and PhDs. And then the practical element, like kind of updating your CV, updating your LinkedIn profile, preparing for interviews, whether that may be competency-based, strengths-based interviews, or indeed answering tricky questions. And in addition to doing events like today and seminars like today or workshops, we also have a number of platforms that are very useful that you can use to help you. So the first one there in terms of personality assessment, verbal, numerical, abstract reasoning practice, situational judgment tests, resilience scale, motivation indicators, emotional intelligence questionnaires, and career interest questionnaires or inventories. We have a subscription to an excellent service called Team Focus or Profiling for Success. And as a UL student, you have free access to that. You can go in with your UL student email and you can register. And once you get onto that site, then there's a whole range of free tests that you can take while you're a student in UL. And I definitely recommend that you all check those out, and that they're really, really useful in terms of, I suppose, filling that gap or auditing yourself in terms of that know yourself area. In terms of the take action bit then, in terms of the practical, you know, CVs and applications, we have a number of supports that are available for you there as well. The first one here is the free CV review that's available to you. So again, we have, you know, bought a subscription with this platform, and you can go in. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and you can get personalized feedback on your CV. So you upload your CV and it gives you steps that you can take to optimize your CV in terms of language, sentence length, paragraphs, formatting, bullets, how it looks, and so that you tailor your CV to specific opportunities. So again, you register with your student email, and then you can log in and upload your CV. And indeed, not alone can you just upload your CV, but you could also upload a job description and a tailored CV, and it will give you feedback relating to that, as well as feedback on cover letters. So again, really, really useful resource that's available to you while you're a registered student in UL. The other practical experience that you can get then would be through this online platform called Shortlist Me, and this offers you the opportunity to complete some practice interviews. So again, the service has bought a license to use this, and as a registered student, then you have access to the platform. There's loads of different types of interviews that you can complete: graduate management, strengths-based, competency, and sector-based interviews. And then after that interview, you will get a report directly into your email, which will give you access to your own recorded answers, as well as feedback that looks at your pace, the number of filler words you use, you know, how fast or like kind of slow that you're speaking in terms of your interview. And you can also even use it to review yourself and see, you know, your own like kind of like, I suppose, qualitative review of how you got on. So they're very, very useful tools and resources that are available to you and will be useful in terms of understanding yourself and what you want to do and where you're at and your skills and abilities, and also helping you in terms of putting applications together. Because while for most postgraduate study, it will be an application that you'll be expected to put together, in some instances you will be asked to include a CV, and you will be often asked to include a personal statement, which is kind of like the equivalent of a cover letter. And as I said, you may be called for interview then for some postgraduate study courses as well. So these resources are also useful to you in that regard. But if we're thinking then in terms of postgraduate study, so why, you know, what might be the reasons, I suppose, that you might pursue postgraduate study? So it might be that you are required to do it for your career. So to get a personal qualification or a teaching qualification, or maybe you want to do a conversion course, for example, psychology, or sometimes if you're coming from you know, a science, engineering, IT background, and you want to get a business qualification, you'll do a conversion course in that area. To continue your studies. So maybe you love what you're studying, you loved completing your FYP, and your passion for that is what's leading you to want to complete postgraduate program of study. It might be very much like kind of practical around improving your job prospects. So by specializing your skill set, you're making yourself a stronger applicant for like kind of graduate roles. And you know, as I mentioned, in terms of those conversion courses, it might be actually to change direction or supplement what you have. So conversion courses are these intensive postgrad programs that allow you to pursue a career that your undergrad or your professional career hasn't prepared you for. So for example, you know, and doing an IT program, law, business, other ones that you can kind of enter into, you'll often hear them as called graduate entry. So you have to have a degree to enter into them, but they consider them like kind of a primary award. So medicine, for example, or some of the health sciences programs, the professional masters in speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and so on. So let me just ask you if you can use the text function there, the chat function. For those of you that are thinking in terms of a postgraduate study course, why is it that you're looking for, you know, is it any of the 4 examples that I've mentioned in the slide, or is there another reason as to why you're thinking in terms of pursuing a postgrad program now? Give you a few minutes to kind of answer that. Point 2, okay, so passion for your subject area. Very good, thanks, Keelan. So I love what I'm doing and I want to do more of it. Anyone else? Okay, improve job prospects. Absolutely. That makes sense, very common. Also point 3, And to help develop my business idea, excellent. So it might be around doing, you know, an entrepreneurship master's, like kind of in terms of I have this idea, and I want to learn how to like kind of expand on that. Great, thanks a million. So yeah, so I suppose the next thing then is to think about, you know, what type of postgraduate program I want to do. So interestingly, particularly I would say if you're thinking in terms of your passion for your subject area and your FYP is something that like kind of, you know, gave you real insight into how much you love, you know, what you're doing, you'll often find that students will decide that they want to go on and do a research postgraduate. So either a PhD or a master's, a doctorate or a master's. And that like kind of sometimes indeed, you know, students that have like kind of very strong academic ability may even be approached by their FYP supervisor or someone in their department and like kind of recommended to do a PhD or master's. And so that would be like kind of a research postgraduate. Others then might decide that they want to do again to improve like kind of job prospects, or for example, like kind of that example around, you know, developing my business idea and setting up on my own. It might be completing like kind of a taught program, could be a postgraduate certificate, a postgraduate diploma, or a master's. And that might be like kind of in an area that's around specific expertise. So I'm doing my business studies degree now, for example, and I'm really interested in HR and I'm majoring in HR. And now I find that I love HR, so I want to kind of focus, you know, more on that. So I might decide that I want to do the master's in work and organizational behavior, or I want to do a master's in HR because I want to kind of get into that in more detail. Or, for example, you know, I have, regardless of what my background is, I have this business idea, and so I think it'd be great to do a master's in entrepreneurship, and that would add value to my knowledge and to my business knowledge, and that's like kind of the direction I want to go. And then in terms of the modes of study, you know, you'll find that they can be full-time, part-time, and obviously, I suppose very much more so than would have been the case prior to COVID, you'll find that there's a blended version of online and distance, or online and face-to-face as a mode of study. Again, I suppose that very much depends on your area. I mean, if you're a lab-based, you know, if you're currently lab-based, or if your postgraduate program is lab-based, then, you know, it's chances are it's going to be face-to-face and it's going to be on site. But a number of programs like kind of, you know, may have quite a strong online focus. And again, there in terms of, say, the postgraduate certificate, diploma and master's, if you're doing a taught postgrad, the time frame for those then will differ. So you'll often find that a postgraduate certificate or diploma, and the difference between those would be in relation to the number of ECTS, the European credits that you'll be taking in modules, but they tend to run you know, just during the semester. So semester 1 modules, semester 2 modules, and then you finish. Whereas a master's, a taught master's, tends to be a full calendar year. So you start in September 1 year and you finish in September the other year. So you do your modules in semester 1, you do your modules in semester 2, and then in the summer term, that's when you like kind of focus on your thesis, or sometimes they call it a dissertation. And that tends to be for the taught master's programs. Whereas research masters will tend to be up to 2 years, and a PhD tends to be 4 years. So 3 to 4 years is what you'd expect for a PhD. And again, then for PhDs, you'll find that you'll often see them advertised as a structured PhD, which tends to be like kind of a 4-year program. And the first year of a structured PhD is often around completing modules. And then the remaining 3 years of the PhD are very much like kind of the in-depth research that you'd engage in around your topic area. Some of so that's a structured PhD. Then sometimes you'll hear the term like a traditional PhD, and that can be like kind of 3 years, and you may not be doing the modules. But the tendency now in nearly all of the institutions across the island of Ireland are to promote structured PhD. So a student is gaining subject expertise through completing some modules in year 1, and they're also gaining what are called transferable skills. So the skills in terms of communication, project management, teamwork, leadership, and by developing those skills along with your discrete subject area or the specific subject topic that you're working on, then that makes you more employable and better placed to find a job outside of academia or inside academia at the end of your PhD. And so obviously the idea with postgrad study is that it's going to increase your specialist knowledge. It'll increase your skills research, maybe your data analytics, your technical skills, language skills. Some employers target postgrad qualifications specifically, but I suppose if you are doing and if you are thinking about doing postgrad study, many employers don't necessarily say that they want someone with a postgrad qualification, but they will kind of accept applications from final year students and postgrads for their graduate programs. And obviously, if you have a postgraduate qualification, you have an extra year of academic experience, like kind of both theory and practical, that you can use in terms of applying for jobs. So it generally stands to you. And sometimes then companies pay a premium like kind of for postgraduate qualifications. And the other thing is that's like kind of really useful, and I suppose definitely like kind of it's I suppose traditionally in the face-to-face, and you might need to work a little bit harder at it if a lot of your program is online. But doing a postgraduate course gives you increased networking opportunities and contacts. You'll meet people that are doing a postgraduate study from different institutions that have done different undergraduates to you, and it's a great way to develop your network and contacts. Like kind of that'd be very useful going forward for you. With regard to, I suppose, applying then, what does that look like? I suppose what's important here is that there's no one standard application process or no one standard deadline. So you need to do your own research depending on the area that you were interested in. Look up the course, contact the course director, look up like kind of the general website and find out, because deadlines do differ. For example, many taught postgraduate programs will have a specific deadline. Some will have what are called a rolling deadline, so you can apply anytime, and you may get what's called a conditional offer. So you could apply in January and you might be starting until the following September, and you could get an offer in February, subject to you achieving whatever QCA that they're looking for, that you have a place on the program. With PhDs, the tendency is that the applications are taken like kind of on a monthly basis. Most of the application forms now are online, and they will look for your academic qualifications and achievements, your employment experience, and a supporting statement. And generally, you have to provide an official transcript of your results. So you won't get that official transcript of your results until after your final, your award is issued. But you can generally like kind of apply for the postgraduate program and then follow on with the transcript once it's available. If you're say doing your undergrad here in UL and then you're applying for a postgrad here in UL, you don't even need to worry about that, because obviously graduate and professional studies would be able to get that information like kind of from academic registry once your awards have been published. And then some postgrad programs will interview candidates as part of the selection process. And generally speaking, they say that on the information that you're getting, at the time of application. We'll look a little bit, I suppose, more at supporting statement in a minute. But if I just look at some application do's and don'ts, I mean, look, this is, I guess, the standard line is like kind of don't leave it to the last minute if you can, because what you want to show, for rolling applications, the earlier you apply, the earlier you get your offer, and then you're done and you're sorted. But also like kind of if it is deadline based, you don't want the system to crash on you. So try and like kind of get your application in ahead of any closing dates. You do want to demonstrate that you've researched the course and the institution. So, that like kind of as part of your application, you've looked at the modules you're studying, you've looked at the career trajectories for like kind of past graduates that's generally like described on the program. You've looked at the department where you will be studying, or the college or the faculty, depending on what institution, and that you've looked at the institution overall. When you're talking about yourself, then you want to focus on your achievements and interests that support your application. So for example, you know, if you're applying for a postgrad and you know that it's like a taught master's and you're going to be doing a dissertation, you definitely want to talk about like kind of your research ability, the fact that you've done an FYP, the fact that you have, you know, research skills or carried out research, or if you've done like kind of some modules in an area that you know that like kind of, you know, are part of the postgrad, but you'll be doing them in more depth. Talk about like kind of how you got on in that module. What were your achievements with regard to that module? What were your outcomes? And showing that you're ready by highlighting your analytical and your research skills. So that's to that point around like kind of FYP. Look, if you're not doing an FYP, think in terms of like kind of other research capacity or other research that you may have had to do for modules, and or your analytical skills. And then if invited to an interview, it is a good idea to treat it like a job interview. So dress appropriately, like as if it's a job interview. You will be getting asked kind of the standard questions that you'd expect in a job interview, such as tell me a little bit about yourself and why are you interested in this program? Why should we offer you a place on this program? You know, what's your study method? Like kind of, can you give me examples of how you manage your time? How have you managed your time in the past? That, you know, you'll be able to demonstrate that you can do so again in the future. And again, don't be afraid to kind of, you know, do the shortlist me interview prep for those, and or make an appointment with myself or one of the team to have a mock interview for postgrad study. And so then I want to tell you a little bit about supporting statements. So supporting statements, or personal statements they might sometimes be called, these are very important for a postgraduate application, because it's the way that you can show how you have like kind of done your research on the course of the organization, and how you're tying your CV and your experience like kind of into the program. It shows course directors like kind of a little bit more about you, and you might need to do several drafts before you're happy with it. So that's why it is important not to leave it to the last minute. And I do think like kind of getting, you know, a couple of different pairs of eyes looking at that is a good idea. So contacting ourselves and, you know, having like kind of a chat with one of us around your supporting statement, but also you know, like kind of showing it to like kind of friends or colleagues or parents or family, like that's a good idea as well in relation to your supporting statement. So what should it include? So your personal statement is generally, I suppose, structured around like kind of, we'd be suggesting like 4 or 5 sections. Now, some institutions and some universities will tell you exactly what they want you to cover. Make sure you follow their instructions if they do that. But in the instance that they leave it up to you, the first thing you want to do, and it's a bit like a cover letter, if any of you have ever written a cover letter, you want to introduce yourself. So why have you decided to choose this course and this university? So that's your first section or your first paragraph. You want to talk about your academic qualifications. So, you know, maybe talk about your award category. You can say QCA, but most institutions would recognize like kind of, you know, 1.1, 2.1 award categories more than they'd recognize maybe the QCA, because that's something that just we're very familiar with in UL. So you want to talk about your academic qualifications, mention relevant subjects or modules that you have done, and, you know, show like kind of that you know that they would be of use and relevance to you in terms of the course that you're interested in. Then talk about your own achievements and qualities. And so that might be, you know, your involvement in clubs and societies or extracurricular or team sports. What are those qualities that make you suitable? And really there you're kind of trying to show your motivation and your enthusiasm and suitability for the course. And then you can talk about any work experience you've completed. So some of you, if you've done co-op, you may have work experience that's quite relevant. But don't worry, like kind of, if you don't have like kind of co-op experience, any experience that you have, you know, whether it's working part-time in retail or in hospitality, and think in terms of like kind of what you learned from that. So that might be around teamwork, communication, customer experience. All of that like kind of is very useful and relevant going forward in terms of like kind of you're presenting your communication. And so there's a combination of that, your experience, and then how the course, the postgrad program, will also expand the skills that will prepare you for the career that you're interested in. And then your end paragraph or your summary is like kind of trying to sum up your suitability for the course and show clearly that you know what you want to get out of it. So, I mean, I suppose, that's the broad overview in terms of like kind of your personal statement. In terms of the look and sound of it, so you want to pay attention to the paragraphs and sentences. You're not going to be able to include everything. So you want to be selective and choose what's relevant to your application. So that's where your research of the course or your research of the institution comes in. Your writing reflects your work, so you need to make sure that that's impressive. It is fine to use personal pronouns, so I or my in a personal statement, but try not to overuse them. So you don't want every paragraph and every sentence starting with I. And try and use link words additionally, furthermore, however, and read it out loud. And as I said, get someone else to read it as well. Things to avoid, like cliches like from a young age or since I was a child or I've always or I have a thirst for knowledge, big kind of broad, expansive statements like that, like try to avoid those, or stating the obvious. In my work experience, I learned to communicate, which is an important skill in teaching. Like kind of, I mean, that is obvious. You don't want to kind of hammer it over the head of someone. And avoid flattery. It'd be such an honor to be offered a place in your renowned university. Again, avoid those types of statements, or as I said, sweeping statements. And I believe I'm highly motivated, or my achievements are vast. Give examples, give specific examples, provide evidence. If you think you're highly motivated, what's your evidence-based example to prove that you are motivated? So to summarize, because we're just coming to the end, you want to tailor your personal statement to your subject, show you understand it. You want to research the skills and qualities of the courses that you're applying for. What do they require? Show how you have them. Don't leave your statement to the last minute. Give your time to redraft and meet with others and get feedback. Check your spelling and grammar, and make sure you keep a copy in case you get called to interview. And then finally, 10 top tips. So you need to go back and think about the type of program you want, whether it's taught or research, or is it a conversion, or is it around increasing your skills in a specific area. Investigate the options using like kind of, general websites and looking at departments. Don't be afraid to consult your current academic advisor. So that's a good idea, and particularly if you're interested in doing a PhD. Find out about funding, look at closing dates that you need to be aware of. Continue to pay attention to grades. Generally speaking, you're talking about needing a 2.1 or higher if you're talking about doing a research postgrad, and 2.2 or higher if you're talking about doing a taught postgrad. And think about like kind of who you could contact to get an academic reference. You need to have someone who's going to be able to support your academic ability, someone who particularly like kind of for PhD or research master's applications. Application technique is important, so make sure your personal statement is well written and that like kind of it hits all of those markers that we talked about earlier. And talk to postgrads. So find people that are currently doing postgrads and ask them about like kind of the courses that you're interested in. And to be prepared to persevere and persist, because if this is something that you're really interested in, sometimes it won't always like kind of come through for you the first time. So being prepared to persist and persevere is a very good, I suppose, way to kind of succeed. So thank you very much. I'll stop the recording now, and if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Thank you.